Sometimes, we don't really disappear. We just forget how to see ourselves. After leaving his rose, the little prince arrived on Earth. It was a golden field, where the breeze made every leaf shimmer with soft light. He felt a little lonely, for none of the flowers here were like his rose. He met a fox sitting in the distance, its eyes bright like stars. "Come and play with me," said the little prince. "I can't," replied the fox softly. "I haven't been tamed." "What does that mean, tamed?" asked the little prince, puzzled. The fox smiled and said, "Taming means creating a connection. Right now, you're just another boy to me. But if you come every day at the same time, I'll know when to expect you." And so, the little prince came each day, a little closer than before. At first, he sat far away, then closer and closer still, until the fox grew used to his scent and his quiet presence. That evening, the sunset lingered long. Golden light draped across the soft meadow, and the grass swayed gently with the wind. The fox looked quietly at the little prince. "If you tame me," she said, "you must remember, from that moment on, my world will no longer be the same." Her voice was as soft as the wind. "The paths you walk, the words you speak, the scent you leave, they'll all become part of my life. So, taming is also a kind of responsibility. Not to make you stay, but to help you understand. Some connections, once formed, can never truly be forgotten." The little prince nodded, his eyes bright. He didn't fully understand, but he was willing. So he reached out his hand, and the fox came closer, bit by bit, until the space between them turned into trust. One day, the fox said, "Look, the color of the field has turned like your hair. Now, whenever the wind brushes through the golden grass, I'll think of you." They both smiled. It was a quiet kind of happiness, like the wind and sunlight meeting inside the heart. Days passed, one after another. The grass still shimmered with golden light in the wind. The fox had grown used to waiting, used to the quiet comfort of his presence. But in the little prince's heart, a faint unease began to stir. He often thought, "How is my rose now? Have I gone too far from her?" That longing ached softly inside him. One evening, he sat beside the fox and whispered, "On my planet, I left behind a rose. She's proud and fragile. Sometimes she makes me angry, but I still think of her." The fox listened silently, her eyes on him. The wind rose from afar, rippling through the field. After a long pause, the little prince finally said, "I think I should go." The fox froze. "You're leaving?" "I don't know where. Maybe to find an answer. I want to understand what love means, and what responsibility really is." The wind swept across the plain, carrying away the words he couldn't finish. The fox lowered her head, tracing circles in the dirt with her tail. "Do you remember what I told you?" she murmured. "Taming means being responsible." The little prince looked up, eyes glimmering with apology. "I don't know what to do. I think I'm still searching for an answer, but it doesn't seem to be here." He paused, voice quieter now. "I'm afraid that if I stay, I'll disappoint you. But if I leave, it feels like I'm betraying this place." The fox's throat moved faintly, and a glint of light passed through her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "The wind goes where it must. I won't stop you. I don't want you to leave with guilt. Only—" Her voice faded like a dying breeze. "I haven't yet learned how not to wait." The little prince said nothing. He simply held her, gently. The embrace was brief, like wind brushing through hair, but it left behind a trace of warmth. "You've shown me," he said softly, "how beautiful it is to be understood." The fox didn't open her eyes. She only listened to his footsteps fade into the distance. The wind moved across the field, and the golden grass swayed softly. She didn't chase him. She only listened, quietly, to that distant sound, like someone still whispering goodbye. The little prince was gone. The plain suddenly felt too wide, the sound of the wind too sharp. The fox sat quietly, staring toward where he had vanished. She thought she would cry, but no tears came. Only a hollow ache began to spread inside her. The wind still blew, carrying the scent he left behind. She whispered, "Responsibility. Perhaps, sometimes, it's also a reason to say goodbye." She tried to walk back into the forest, but found her shadow fading. Starlight fell through the treetops, brushing her fur, as if whispering, "You don't need to be seen." She paused, lifted a paw. It, too, was turning transparent. "Maybe that's better," she murmured. "If no one can see me, then no one will leave me." The wind gave no reply. It only swirled softly around her, as though holding a heart that was quietly disappearing. Night had fallen. The forest was so still that only the wind could be heard. Then, through the breeze, a soft hue shimmered, like a melody carried from afar. It was Luan. She drifted down with the wind, holding her paintbrush. She walked deep into the forest and saw a fox, almost transparent. "Hello," Luan said gently. The fox didn't move, just tilted her head. "You can't see me, can you? Because I don't want to be seen anymore." Luan smiled. "That's all right. I just want to listen to what the wind is saying." The fox hesitated. The wind turned softly between them, bringing a quiet warmth. "What are you doing?" asked the fox. "I'm waiting," Luan replied. "For the moment you feel ready to speak." Silence lingered. Then the fox whispered, "If you paint me, I'll be seen again. And being seen means being heard again." Luan didn't answer right away. She smiled faintly. "I understand. It feels safer that way. When no one sees us, no one can leave us." She paused, her tone softening. "But sometimes, when we hide too long, we slowly forget how to see ourselves." The fox looked up, startled. "To see myself?" Luan set down her brush and met her eyes. "I won't force you. But sometimes, seeing yourself isn't for someone else to come close. It's to remember that you still exist." The fox blinked. "To remember myself?" Luan nodded. "Yes, even if no one sees you, you're still here." For a long time, the fox was quiet. The wind brushed past her fur, and something deep inside her began to ripple, as if something long asleep was finally waking. "Maybe," she whispered, "I can let myself be seen just a little." Luan smiled. Lifting her brush once more, she painted gently, stroke by stroke, The warmth of orange fur, the soft white of her tail, and those eyes that once learned to wait and now dared to trust again. The wind grew softer. Bubbles floated through the air, catching the colors of the sky. The fox murmured, "I think I'm not as afraid anymore." The fox gazed at her half-transparent form, a faint glow flowing through her fur, breathing softly, like life returning. "I thought that if I stayed invisible, I wouldn't hurt anymore. But in the end, I couldn't even see myself." Luan sat beside her, letting the wind move gently between them. "I'm still afraid," the fox whispered. "Maybe tomorrow I'll want to hide again." "That's okay." Luan smiled. "The wind will remember you, and the light won't rush you. It only appears when you're ready." The fox breathed quietly, feeling a warmth bloom in her chest. Not a blinding light, but a soft brightness returning to her heart. "Maybe I can come back, little by little, not for anyone else, just to see myself again." "That light is already here," Luan said, "in the place where you allow yourself to feel." The wind stirred, and her chest began to glow, a slow breath awakening inside. She looked up at the stars. The wind brushed through the field, carrying a tender golden shimmer. Her voice was barely above the breeze. "Maybe I'm beginning to understand. What truly matters was here in my heart all along." She lifted her head, feeling the wind comb through her fur. "I'll learn to open and close my heart, like the wind, embracing when it comes and letting go when it leaves." Bubbles rose, and the forest breathed once more. "I'm still here," she whispered. "And now, I want to come back." What's essential is not unseen. It's what we slowly learn to see again within ourselves.